Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, we'll start with Jim over here. Okay, question.
This is regarding building bacteria in the intestines. Like what is friendly for that and what is harmful for it, or cuts it out. You know what I mean? I'm taking high meat some and trying to establish, bacterial growth there. But what is bad for it and what other things are good for it?
Well, if you wash the high meat down with milk, the lactic acid will destroy a lot of the bacteria, so that won't work. Also, honey eaten with high meat will destroy it.
I see.
So you need to wait about 15 minutes after you eat the high meat before you have anything else, except for water. Water doesn't seem to destroy the bacteria.
Okay.
You can rinse your mouth out with lemon or lime juice if you want, to get rid of the taste and the odor if you have any odor.
Any other foods good for it or not good for it?
Well, fecal matter is always great, because fecal matter has the E. coli directly to get the bowels going properly. If it's the small intestines, the high meat's a little bit better. If it's your bowels that's a problem, then eating E. coli, the fecal matter is best.
All right.
Okay.
How do you eat that stuff?
Take on that? What would the maximum amount of a combination of fecal matter and high meat would be for a healthy person on the diet?
If you want to build the E. coli to make sure it gets all the way down to the bowels, to make sure as much as possible gets down, it's good to eat a little high meat first, and then eat some fecal matter after that. And what you could do is, I've seen people eat a tremendous amount, like 4 ounces of high meat with 2 ounces of fecal matter, including the bowel with it, the bowel tissue. And it's never caused a problem. And when people have done that, they've only had to do it one time, eat that much one time, to completely relieve chronic constipation that's been carried on all their life. And it will work, and it's worked for up to 8 months at a time, just one eating.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes. Chronic aphthous fungus, right? Over a lifetime, right? How would you address that?
Well, there's no way you can stop it because that mold eats. The body flows this way, and a lot of the heavy metals go to the bottom of the body in the feet. And since everything is constricted and we wear shoes and we keep air off of it, it has a tendency to cause the tissue in the foot to detoxify via molds. So the only way to address that is to give it more air, to make sure you wear sandals, something like that, just to give it more air. You could also use the Primal Facial Body Care Cream directly on the feet, and that'll stop the itching. Won't stop the mold, but it'll stop the damage done as the decomposing byproducts from the mold are passed through the skin that causes the dryness and the flaking of the skin and the tissue. So it will mitigate the symptoms, the agony of the itching and the burning and the soreness, but it won't stop the mold. You just can't stop it unless you take something like an antibiotic. And then you're basically making your feet move toward a serious disease.
Okay, thank you.
And the diseases that could be created by stopping the mold from growing in the feet are osteoporosis, because if they get into the bones and grow where they normally, usually are in the skin and then go to the joints and the cartilage, and if they pass into the bone, then it'll cause osteoporosis. It can also cause rheumatoid arthritis, overgrowth of tissue, spurs.
Okay.
So it's good to have the mold. It's just that you need to relieve the symptoms and stop eating the things that cause all the kind of deterioration in the body that promotes the Yeah.
So are you saying that the mold or the antibiotics cause the rheumatoid arthritis and the
Both will
joint
cause it.
problems?
But the mold won't cause it. The mold prevents it. Trying to prevent it. But if somebody keeps eating a bad diet, the worst diet there is, then of course it'll just get worse.
Mine went away when I stopped using soap. It was like right after, like within a week.
Stop using what?
Soap.
Soap.
I just started.
Well, some people, just from eating, they're allergic to soaps. So when they put soap on their skin, it damages the skin, and then molds are there to break down those cells. So you just have to stop using soap. Stop breaking down the skin, the second and third layer of skin deep. Because if the soap gets in there and damages it, then a mold has to break it down.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask about muscle tone. How does one prevent from losing muscle tone without having to work out all that much and maintain skin elasticity?
Well, that's a matter of eating enough raw meat long enough. It usually takes somebody 6 years on the diet to get rid of all the toxic connective tissue that's involved in supplying. The lymph system feeds every cell in the body except for blood cells, red and white.
Mm-hmm.
So if the lymph system is circulating properly, it can get the nutrients into the connective tissue and into the muscles. Does everybody take care of that?
And that's Lewis's clipboard.
Oh, your clipboard. Okay.
And pencil, pen, Kathy. Oh, it's yours. So as the lymph system feeds everything, and it also pulls out all the byproducts and waste products. So if the lymph system isn't functioning properly, you'll store a lot of garbage in the connective tissue and in the lymph, and then everything cannot be fed properly. And it usually takes about 6 years, 6.5 years on the diet, depending upon your age, to get to that point. I haven't worked out now in 25, 26 years, and solid everywhere.
Okay.
I walk maybe once a month, a couple miles.
But isn't it recommended that one exercise?
It depends upon the individual. If you have overactive hormones and you have a high hormonal level, you have to exercise, or else you'll not be a nice person. So I have no overactive hormones. So I used to have very overactive sex glands. Those are the only ones that were ever overactive. So I used to just masturbate a lot. So my wrist action was good. That was it. So that's all the exercise I had to do. But that's mellowed out. Thank God. Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah. Recently, I've started having like more painful detoxes. And I was just talking a little bit with Kathy, and she was saying you said something about like when you get the pain on this side, it's really coming from over here. So I was just kind of interested in just finding out like the mechanics of what goes on when you're detoxing, what causes the different symptoms and stuff.
Well, the transference from one side to the other usually only happens in the spinal cord.
Oh, okay.
And directly at the spinal cord. But otherwise, that usually doesn't happen. Sometimes in an appendicitis, you'll have the pain over here and the appendix is really over here. Those are about the only two circumstances where the pain is transferred from one side to the other. The brain can also do that, but it's part of the nervous system.
So if I got I had a very sharp pain in the shoulder, so is that something's detoxing from the shoulder?
Absolutely. And you have to understand, we get our injections
Yeah.
in the arms up here,
Yeah.
and most of that toxicity goes into the joint.
Oh, okay.
And usually during late fall and the winter is the time for those joints to detoxify. Usually by the time May comes around, it'll stop.
Okay. And I just had like with the neck, it was like really, I was flat in my back for 2 days. So is that like it's stored in the neck too?
Well, you have a lot of toxins stored in the neck. Everybody does.
Oh,
Heavy
okay.
metals, everything. The brain has the most toxins, the lethal toxins, anything in the body, any part of the body. The brain works off of metallic minerals, metals as well. So there are heavy metals when you're eating cooked foods, when you're breathing in pollution. Most of that is concentrated in the brain. And the lymph glands in your neck and throat and your sinuses are where the brain detoxifies. So if it has to transfer down through the brainstem, down to these lymph glands in here, you're going to have a lot of pain in the neck. So it doesn't necessarily have to be directly in the neck, but it will pass through the neck and cause the same kind of pain as if it were in the neck. Sometimes if it's in the neck, then you'll also get an inflamed skin and maybe some rash as a detoxifier. Usually we'll follow the pain. If it's in the brainstem, the glands will swell in the throat and you'll start discharging mucus in the throat and sometimes in the sinuses.
Okay.
Oh, we're getting into anatomy this time.
Oddly enough.
You usually full of questions. Do you have a question?
Actually, I do.
What is your name? That's what I'm asking.
Cynthia, hi.
Cynthia?
Hi. What is the best diet to heal liver damage?
That depends upon what's in the liver and what's caused the damage.
If it was cytomegalovirus, it's no longer active.
A virus is never the problem. A virus is a solvent. The body makes virus. Viruses are not alive. They're just a soap. So it goes in dissolved toxicity. So if you had a virus, all of your hepatitis virus, all of them are made within the liver or some other part of the body to dissolve dead cells in the liver to get rid of the liver damaged liver tissue so you can rebuild the liver and help it. So any of the hepatitis and retroviruses, megaviruses are your last-ditch effort to save a very toxic liver.
So it wouldn't happen if the liver weren't toxic to begin with?
Correct, absolutely.
Anything in particular to eat?
Well, like I said in the book, when I had the poison mushroom destroyed the liver, butter. Cream is a little too hard on the liver because it has to take the cream and make it into butter. It has to separate it. It has to use lots of enzymes to separate the whey and make it into butter. So if it's already in a butter form, the liver doesn't have to work as hard. And you have to push it. Like I forced myself to eat at least 1.5 pounds of butter a day after the poison mushroom because I knew the liver would not work unless I forced it to work. You're welcome.
Can you talk a
You
bit-
get around, don't you?
I do.
I thought I was seeing twins.
I'm hoping that you could talk a bit about worry circles and exercise and the kind of exercise and
Well, in the iris, if you see bands that go around the eye, if you see the muscles in the irises, they have breaks in it, little spaced areas where it looks like there are arcs, or complete circles. I call those worry circles. Most iridologists call them stress rings. I don't like to call them stress rings because most people think they have no power over stress. But what they mean is you produce a lot of hormones. The more worry circles, the more hormones you produce, and the more physically oriented you are as a birthright, as genetically. They don't change. They never change. So athletes usually have from 6 to 10 worry circles. So they have to exercise 5 to 10 hours a day, minimum. People who have 3 worry circles need to exercise about an hour and a half a day. If you have up to 5, 6 worry circles, anywhere from 2 to 3 hours a day. If you're fortunate like me, if you want to be, somebody who's a writer and stuff like that, then no worry circles is preferable, which is what I have. But if you have worry circles, you do need to exercise. If you have only 1 worry circle, about half an hour to 45 minutes a day. So if you can look in your eyes and you can see that, then you can tell and you can count them. But when people come to me for a reading, I tell them if they need exercise and how much time they need to exercise.
And are there particular kinds of exercise that you would recommend, or just anything from walking to biking to yoga?
If the worry circles are complete circles, they need to do high intensive things like aerobics, dance, heavy sport, tennis, basketball, swimming. What was that about? If your circles break up, you can jog a block and then walk a block. You don't need to do that intense, constant activity. Does that mean we have an ice cream truck?
It's ice cream truck.
Background music.
It's playing that tune from my high school song about, do your balls hang low, do they wobble to the floor, climbing a boat. Throw them over your shoulder like a continental soldier, do your balls hang low. That's what the melody is.
I think that was a tune that was adapted to that.
I don't know if that was the original. I don't think that was the original.
I grew up a lot of macho assholes, and I never heard that one before. Max, do you have a question? Did I answer everything, Mary Jo, to your satisfaction? Okay. Do you have a question?
Yes, about coconut cream. Do we need to be careful what we're eating it with and what we're not eating it with? And particularly, I'm interested in high meat and eggs. Some of those detox issues.
Well, I wouldn't eat it with high meat. It might interfere with it. The body makes a lot of solvents with the types of cholesterol, types of fat that are in coconut cream, so it could interfere with the bacterial growth as it's passing through anyway. Coconut cream is your best solvent. If you take one of those canning jar lids that are metal and not enameled, and you put the coconut cream on it, 20 minutes to an hour later it will be black. So quickly it pulls up metal, dissolves compounds in the body. So it is the best fat to use to detoxify of anything, especially the lymph system. Eating it with pineapple increases the solvent reaction. So when anybody uses that, I suggest that they also use raw cream and butter with the coconut cream and the pineapple, so that you have enough of the good fats to arrest. I don't know why. I usually take my shoes off immediately when I go into the house.
Is that comfortable for you?
It's wonderful.
Okay.
So you need some other fats to bind with those poisons once they're pulled out of the system. The coconut won't necessarily do it. So the animal fats are better for arresting the poison.
So you should never, or is it bad to have just a scoop or two of coconut cream and then eat your meat, and then you have to have other fats afterwards, right?
You should always have animal fats with your meat, not just coconut cream. Like I said, coconut cream is mainly a solvent.
Gotcha.
Only when it gets to the skin and the hair is it a lubricant. Sometimes in the joints a little bit.
Okay. And then to the eggs, is there any problem having it at the same time you're having eggs?
Eggs have a tendency to be a detoxifier when it's mixed with coconut cream or fruit. So, eggs can be used if they're eaten alone. Eggs can usually bind with poisons that are in the blood and in the system, neurological system. They can also help reconstitute cells. They don't help cellular division, reproduction, but they do help restructure, give new protein and new fats to cells that are already alive. But when egg is mixed with any kind of fruit or coconut cream, it'll become more of a solvent. So,
Thank you.
In conjunction with that, what happens if you eat meat alone?
Most of it will turn into pyruvate. You'll use it as a fuel. You won't be able to use it to help regenerate cells. So you're not going to get younger. Stronger, yes.
I'm kind of piggybacking on that. If there are some situations where I just need a serious dose of energy and I don't want to reach for coffee. So in a situation like that,
I don't want you to reach for coffee either.
I know. Truth be known, I fell off the wagon for a while and I've been doing some of that. But and I noticed that a few times when I had to go into certain situations, I really was grateful for having that energy, which from the green juices I really hadn't had for many months. And I started to imagine that it might be okay if I were eating enough meat regularly that I could, in those situations, eat some beef soaked in lemon juice for that fuel.
Not a good idea.
No, okay.
Because it will interfere with the digestibility of the red meat. It doesn't do it with white meat for some reason, but in my experimentations with people, it does interfere with the proper digestion of the meat. The reason I say that, mainly for women, what happens is they mix the lemon juice with red meat. It has a tendency to turn into acetate, which is a fat. So if you want pyruvate to help burn the fat that you have and to have more strength, then it's better not to mix lemon juice with your red meat.
What's pyruvate?
Pyruvate is a sugar made from proteins. And acetones can be made from anything except fat. You can eat carbohydrates and the body will turn some of those carbohydrates into an acetate, an acetone. And same with meat. It's a fat made off of other substance other than fat. And that's usually the fat that stores in the body heavily.
So what her question was, she wanted to eat some red meat in a way that it would give her more energy to see her rebuilding. Yeah. So with the avocado or green juice with the meat?
No, I'm going to get into that. Okay. I explained this several times before. When I took the Los Angeles Police Department and the City of LA to federal court, I was my own attorney. And I was only able to get an hour and a half sleep a day. Because I had to prepare for the next day. I had 22 cops up there on the witness stand, at least 8 a day, for 2 weeks. They were interfering with runaways working on Venice Beach. And I had had enough of it, so I followed suit on it. Anyway, during that time, I was only able to sleep an hour and a half a day, and I slept in 10-minute increments. What I would do to keep my energy level up and my focus, my mental balance, is I would eat every hour. I would eat either a couple of golf ball sizes of meat, like a half a cup of meat. Next hour would be an egg. Next hour would be a half a cup of milk with extra cream. I never ate enough to satiate my body, but enough to keep from getting uncomfortably hungry. And that kind of keeps the energy level up very high. And it's difficult to get sleepy when you're doing it.
That seems to kind of resonate with what I've been hearing about the calorie restriction diet, that they say never to eat more than a cup of food at a time.
Yeah, but you're not going to get healthy doing it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just if you need energy for a long, sustained period of time. But if you want to get healthy, you have to have tremendous amounts of fat on the body. Because the fats bind with the poisons. Otherwise, the poisons get into the cells and damage the RNA and DNA and the cell itself and can kill them, and often do. And the fat, if you have them, it will absorb it. To give you an example, in September, I was in Asheville, North Carolina, and there's a whole group there who had been longtime vegetarians in a community called Earth Haven. 99% longtime vegetarians, all very ill. One of them got on my diet, made such a radical change that everybody started following suit. So now there are no vegetarians in that community. And they've all changed. They're even raising, pigs and everything now. Goats, and cows for their milk and everything. But when I was there, and let me tell you, the vegetarians were more unhealthy than most of my regular, American type sad diet people, standard American diet people. But one of these fellows came in, and I could see he'd never even been into health consciousness at all. He had very thick skin, looked like he had been a drug addict and an alcoholic for 30 years. And, I photographed his irises and blew his irises up on the screen, and they were clean, like he was a young man in his 20s, and he was about 52, 53 years old. And I said, and he was probably maybe 20 pounds overweight. So there was something very wrong with that picture. So I said, it doesn't make sense. I can tell that you've been a drug user for at least 25, 30 years, alcoholic for at least 30 years. He said, yes. I said, but it doesn't make sense because you don't have all this internal damage that most people have at your weight. He said, well, when I went on your diet 5 months ago, I was 300 pounds. He had been that fat most of his life. And all that fat protected his glands and his organs and everything from severe damage. So fat is a wonderful thing. Extreme fat is even a wonderful thing.
Longest, like over 500 pounds, 600.
Well, that gets a little much there. When you have to have a crane to be taken places, that's a little difficult.
So I just wanted to understand, I think in the past, I thought you had said if you mix your green juice with the meat, it creates pyruvate. Was that wrong?
No, you won't digest either.
Oh, okay.
The vegetable juice is alkaline, your fruit is acid. You need an acid environment to digest the meat. You need an alkaline environment to digest the juice. You mix them together, they do not digest.
So what about just like a little bit of like if you put too much like green, what do you call it, garnish with your meat?
It'll also do the same thing, prevent your meat from digesting.
And the same with avocado, with the meat?
No, avocado is a fat.
Okay.
It's not a high alkaline food. It's a neutral. Most of your fats are neutral. In fact, all of your fats are pretty neutral.
So if you basically if you eat a pyruvate, it will give you energy, right? Even though it's not rebuilding your cells, right?
Oh yeah, it'll give you lots of energy.
Yeah.
Unless you're a completely skinny person
Right.
and don't have any fat to burn.
Okay.
Then the pyruvate is going to burn quickly, and you're going to have, will be like sugar. You'll have a quick high energy for maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and then you won't have any energy.
So if I just eat red meat with nothing with it, that's going to be a pyruvate. So
Yeah.
I got to put butter with it to make it really rebuild.
Or cream.
Okay.
Or a combination.
All right.
Now that little bit of thyme that we add to ceviche or something like that, is that
The herbs.
the little bit of herbs, is that going to?
Like I said in the recipe book, 2 tablespoons of herbs with a meat meal is not enough to cause a problem.
Okay, so a little bit is okay then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Or else I made a bad recipe book.
Yeah, because I was going,
Excuse me, what is your name?
Asunta?
Asunta? What is your, do you have a question, Asunta?
Okay. Well, my question, I notice I let mental problems get to me. Is there anything you can suggest as far as diet or other things as to for the worrisome mind?
Yeah, stand-up comedy.
Oh, yeah,
Comedy
we've
writing.
discussed that. Yeah, we discussed that. Yeah.
It's just a different focus, It's a different focus. You just have to train yourself. And when you were doing stand-up comedy, Lewis, he was the fellow I wrote about in the book that took a long time to say a simple sentence, and didn't have any friends because nobody had the patience. And it came to the point where he was glib enough but still too serious. So I told him to take a stand-up comedy routine, and it worked. He was very good. He had people laughing. But when you were doing that, you were more fun. And then when you get away from it, you get back into that heavy mentality again. Cream is also very helpful to relax the nervous system.
I love cream, yes.
So if you're wired, been out of shape, upset, cream is the thing to take. Less butter, more cream.
All right.
Nut taste too, right?
Pardon?
Nut taste?
Yeah, nut butter. If you're
That's it. Because those two things, cream and nut butter, I love to consume them.
Good.
Yeah, me too.
Roger, do you have a question?
I think the last time you said that you didn't like flaxseed or something like that. You put it through a grinder. You said it tears up the inside. Does it make any difference if you soak it a while before you eat it?
No. Any seed, all seeds except for chia seeds and poppy seeds, when you break them, they are very sharp. They're very sharp, dry. They're like glass, like paper. You know, paper cuts.
Yeah.
So when you eat flaxseed, ground flaxseed, or bran, flax bran, it will cut your intestines if your mucus lining isn't very, very thick.
I mean, so what?
Eat chia seeds. If you have a bowel problem, constipation problem, and you don't want to eat the fecal matter, then take chia seeds. Take about 2 ounces of chia seeds, put them in an 8-ounce jelly jar, add 6 ounces of water, let it soak for 24 hours, or 5 ounces of water, let it soak for 24 hours, and the water will turn into a gel. Mix that with a lubrication formula, a full lubrication formula, moisturizing formula for you ladies, and mix it together and eat it like a cereal, and you'll have good bowel movements from the bulk. But if you want to really remedy, the problem, which is low bacteria in the colon, then you need to eat fecal and high meat.
Well, but that isn't, the flaxseed is high in omega-3 fatty acids.
That's not a good source to get it. That's just a sales pitch. Yeah. You can eat coconut cream,
Any raw fish?
any raw fish is very high in omegas. And you don't need, when you're on a raw diet, you need very little omega-3, very little omega-6.
What about oysters? Do they come in?
Yes.
Yeah.
They what?
Any seafood is high in omegas, including oysters, clams. Abraham.
Can you have a raw meat without a fat, with energy, and then have a fat like layer, like with an hour layer, an hour?
I do it all the time. I eat fats all day long.
So you don't have to have it together all the time in order to keep your energy.
Pardon?
Like you don't have to mix them right away when you eat them.
Oh, I mix, when I do eat the meat, I always eat fat with it, and then I'll eat more fat later.
The one time I was working with you and you were eating the meat by itself, and then
But then I ate the fat right away.
Oh, right away.
Or I ate the fat first and then ate the meat. You usually see me do the other way.
Okay.
Throughout the day, because you have it in your milk and you have it in your fruit.
Also have my honey and butter mixture all day long, and I'll make a big batch of like a 16-ounce container of lubrication formula, moisturizing lubrication formula, and I'll spoon that out too. I have some with my meat or right after my meat, and then I'll eat some all day long. Yeah.
Honey and butter all on them during the day.
So you don't eat sweet. I mean,
Honey's
right
my
now-
only sweet.
And you fall asleep because of the honey or sweet? Right now I'm falling asleep. And I think because I ate the fat, I ate the meat with the sweet at the same time. I mean, with the dessert.
Uh-huh.
Would that make you sleepy if I don't want to?
Well, eating a lot at one time will cause anybody to get sleepy because their body wants to spend all of its energy on digestibility. If you don't eat fat, it won't work that way. usually. You'll be wired and awake. If you ate, just say fruit and meat together, you might have a little gas and a lot of energy for a little while, and then maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, you'll crash.
Isn't it rare to have gas on when you're fully doing raw diet?
Not if you eat fruit with meat, without fat.
I see.
But you've said not to do it all.
I suggest that you don't do it.
Except pineapple.
Pineapple and papaya. But I mean, with your white meats, you can mix any fruit. It's okay as long as it's a fat with it.
Oh, really?
Have a fruit with chicken, eat fruit.
Chicken, right? Yep.
Oh, wow.
Which fat fruit?
Any. In the book, I have the sauce in there. I think it's a peach sauce for fish. You can have any kind of fruit with white meat, as long as it's with fat. Additionally, not just the fruit with the fish.
You still kind of want to watch out for the alkalinizing effects of the fruit, wouldn't you?
Well, your fish and chicken are pretty alkalinizing. Red meats are very heavily acid.
Okay, what about the cellulose matter in the fruit? Isn't that tough to digest? Fiber?
It depends on how much you eat.
Right.
So the only white meat is chicken and turkey?
White meat is all fowl and all seafood, fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you never use raw pork, right?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah. I eat raw pork not very often, but a couple of times a year I'll crave it and I'll eat it.
Is that white meat?
I usually have to know the pig.
Is it the other white
It has to be organic or I'll eat pig. The only reason for that is pigs have been used for centuries to be garbage collectors. In Israel, when it was illegal to eat pig because the pigs were garbage collectors. People would dump their cooked foods out the window and pigs would go around eating them. So it was illegal to kill pigs. It was illegal to eat pigs because the pigs were eating mainly cooked food that was being put out the windows. So they were getting diseased. So it was illegal to eat them because they were getting diseased and they were the garbage collectors.
And what is trichinosis? Isn't that something associated with pork oftentimes?
Yeah, because that's the trichinosis is a parasite in a pig that helps get rid of his degenerative tissue.
I see. And
so it's a favorable thing to have if you're a pig eater.
Right. And it's harsh if you're a humanoid and you get that.
It's what?
It's harsh on the human body,
No.
trichinosis.
If you eat a lot of pork, you're likely to, and you start having degeneration where the pork has rebuilt cells, you're likely to get trichinosis. To help you detoxify those particular cells that are built off of pork.
Barbie and Barbara.
Is pork white meat or red meat?
Pardon?
Is pork red meat or white meat?
It's kind of a mix, but it's more on the red side.
So the red meat rules apply to pork?
Yep.
I thought it was
No.
pork is
Pork is considered red meat. Yes.
Will a human contract a parasite if they don't need it? For example, hookworm. Will a hookworm grow in human that, according to your theories, don't need to detox or not? It won't.
Parasites have to live on degenerative cells. You have degenerative cells, they're your friend, and they'll help you get rid of those degenerative cells quicker. So this many times, if you have a parasite can eat 100 times its weight in about 10 hours.
Wow.
100 times its weight. Could you imagine eating 100 times your own weight in 10 hours?
No.
It'll take that mass and reduce it to about 1/10 that mass in discarding in its byproducts. Like we made 7 pounds of food in a day, and the next day we drop it out in one, half to a whole pound turd. And that's what parasites do, and bacteria do. They reduce the contamination, so it's easier to handle it. When you have a virus, it's not alive, it does not eat, it just disassembles things. It's a solvent. So you have all this waste product that gets everywhere. That's why it's preferable to have bacteria and parasites to help you. But we are so contaminated with pollution, the pollution in the cells when the parasites and the bacteria go to eat it, they are killed, they are poisoned, so you can't hold on to the bacteria and parasites to help you. That's why the body and you get depressed. Most depression is because your body has to rely upon solvents with high toxicity that permeates the tissues. That's why when people who have chronic psychological problems and depression, once they eat the high meat within 10-20 minutes, they're happy. Because all of a sudden you've given the body some bacteria to help you do the work, the detoxification. And it relieves the body of a lot of work. So those are very good helpers. So you want parasites and you want bacteria. Or I do.
Can you consider it high meat before it turns brown? Because I have some meat that's been sitting in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 months, and I take it out about once a week to air it. But some of them have just not turned brown yet.
They're not turned brown. There's some that stay red, and some of them that turn green and white and black, and the mold. Different bacteria have these different formations.
No. I thought you waited until they turned brown.
Did you see the Ripley's Believe It or Not episode?
No, but I heard.
Oh, I mean, you would have seen all the various colors. Because I had about, somewhere around 40 different types of high meat.
Is it possibly in a copy of the video of that?
I think if you write them, you can do it.
Okay.
Just give them the date. It was July 17th, 2002.
Okay.
But after a while, if you leave it out, during the cupboard, it did turn liquid. It becomes liquid.
Well, it depends on how much it grows and how fast
the bacteria will eventually become liquid in the meat.
It'll liquefy the meat as it's dissolving it.
Mine have become like hard, small hard.
She didn't leave it out.
Your refrigerator sounds like it's too cold.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Did you ask a question?
I didn't have one.
Do you have one now?
Oh,
Do you have a question?
I do. I have had for the past couple of weeks a chronic nosebleed that it's not heavy and it doesn't come out unless I blow my nose. It's just all the time my nose is sore. Whenever I blow my nose, there's blood on the tissue. So what is that? Do you know?
That's an indication that you're discarding some pretty toxic substances from the brain or the eye area out through the sinuses. And you're not forming enough mucus to protect the mucus lining. So eating things like cream and milk and eggs together will help form a lot of mucus. Eggs and cream are very good for that. Like ice cream.
Well,
tough. What a tough prescription.
Also to help, the blood clotting a little bit, so you don't rupture so many blood cells, you can drink a half a cup of green vegetable juice about every 2 days.
Don't you have vegetable juice every day?
I mean, cabbage juice, green cabbage juice.
Oh, cabbage juice.
Green cabbage. Red cabbage will cause bleeding, green cabbage will cause clotting.
Could you even kind of pour it into the nasal passage?
No, you don't want to do that. It's an alkaline substance.
Cabbage juice.
And it causes the mucus to thin. You don't want to thin the mucus. It's already a problem if you're having bloody mucus. Mucus is too thin.
But when you take it internally,
It gets into the blood. It alkalinizes the blood. That's what you want to do, alkalinize the blood. Not the digestive tract. That's why you don't eat whole vegetables on this diet. So you don't have all that vegetable matter going through the intestines, secreting alkaline fluids and interfering with bacteria. So if you drink the juice, it's pretty much all absorbed by the time it reaches the bottom of the duodenum. So it only alkalinizes the blood and temporarily the stomach. And then about 20 minutes, well, about half an hour later, your stomach will be starting to reacidify itself.
And that's why we wait an hour before.
So you wait an hour. If first thing in the morning, it only takes about 20 minutes to absorb the juice, then 20 minutes to reacidify. So in 45 minutes you can eat. But after that, it usually takes a half an hour for each phase. Half an hour to absorb all the juice, and a half an hour to acidify the stomach.
And is that just because you're empty in the morning? I mean, it can be quicker?
Well, you've been at least 5 hours without eating. When you go 5 hours without eating, your body starts eating its own cells. And I don't think there's anybody here that's, that's healthy enough to be a cannibal. And that's what your blood does, becomes cannibalistic after 5 hours. So if your cells are very toxic, then that means your blood is going to get highly acrid and toxic. And that's why a lot of people wake up in the morning, not feel well, have no energy, and quite nauseous. The green juice helps reverse all of that. It supplies your body with lots of enzymes to prepare for digestion. It alkalinizes the blood and helps your body get away from anorexia and nausea.
Is that the importance of drinking it before bed?
For most people, it's better, yes. Well, for children, anyone under the age of 15 or 16 years old should really not be drinking green vegetable juice because it interferes with their digestion almost entirely. So children should not be drinking green vegetable juice.
Should they be eating vegetables at all?
No.
No vegetables. No green.
I mean, you may give them an ounce of green juice once a week.
Sorry, guys.
2 ounces, something like that. Would be fine. But other than that...
I told you they don't need the vitamins.
Yeah, I mean, if the child is eating cooked foods, sure, they should drink vegetable juice. But if they're eating a raw food diet, they should not be drinking green vegetable juice. But you had them on a cooked diet.
Absolutely. I'm still in the right.
Yes, you
On this with the green cabbage juice, is it important to drink it first thing in the morning, or
No.
can it be any time?
It should be either morning or night.
And can you drink it with your regular green?
If you do, you need to wait 10, 15 minutes before you drink your other juice.
So you shouldn't mix the two?
No. The minerals in the other juices have a tendency to bind with the vitamin K and vitamin U, which help blood clotting. It works so well. Let me give you an example. There's a Swiss movie star who had been a long-time vegetarian, like 24 to 26 years. She got uterine cancer. And it started bleeding. And all the doctors, this was a wealthy movie star. She couldn't stop, nobody could stop the bleeding, so they sent her to America, to UCLA and USC medical centers, to talk with their specialists to try to get to stop the bleeding. Because she was having to get up to 2 transfusions a week, occasionally 3 transfusions a week. It's a lot of blood loss. So she was in Erewhon health food store one day, and she saw one of my clients getting all this dairy and butter and everything, and he looked so healthy. She asked him what he was doing. So he told her about the diet and asked her to give me a call. And she called me and she said, I heard about your diet, and I wonder if you can help me, but I'm going to stay vegetarian. I said, well, then I can't help you. And she said, well, this is my problem. I not only have cancer, I'm bleeding, and I'm having to get quite a few transfusions a week. And they've cauterized it, they've grafted skin, they've done everything. And it won't stay sealed, and it keeps bleeding. And I said, well, that's pretty easy. All you have to do is drink, a cup of cabbage juice, 8 ounces of cabbage juice, morning and night, and probably within 24 hours it'll stop. She said, "You are one crazy man." Pop, hung up the phone. I got a call the next morning. She obviously went right out, got the cabbage in to see, and the next morning, and she called me about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She called me at 8 o'clock in the morning to tell me that the bleeding had stopped for the first time in a year and a half. So, of course, you know, she got on the diet. She ate the raw meat, did everything. Everything was going wonderfully. Then she got an attack of, really the story should end there because I'm telling you how it worked. But she got into feeling guilty about eating meat again, so she stopped eating meat, and within 4 months she was dead of cancer and bleeding again.
She stopped eating the meat.
Stopped doing the diet.
Is that one who was on the TV was had the show?
I never watched.
Not the show where she had a
Swiss actress.
Oh no.
So I don't know.
She meant the lady who
Yes.
interviewed.
Yeah, once.
No.
She went to Mexico and got.
That was a moniker.
In your experience, are there people that are too far gone to be helped by following the diet?
There are lots of people that I thought were too far gone, and they reversed. And there were a few people, probably 3 people, that I was sure would never die, but they did.
They were sure would never die.
Yeah, they would not die. But that was only 3 people. You know, and I've seen probably 40 people that I thought would never make it, and they did.
So 3 people didn't follow the diet completely?
No, they followed it, but, you know, and I didn't think they were that far gone, but they died anyway.
Is it because they didn't take high meat or?
No, I don't know what it was.
Started too late.
Maybe they're just willed to die. I don't know. Their time to go. Okay, do you have a question, Kathy?
I just want to mention one thing. I had the deviated septum surgery way before the diet. Now I'm feeling a bump on my nose. It's coming here. I feel it on the right side. It's like a little bump.
It could be going from your bone marrow out through your skin, out through your harder tissue. Then it may go through your skin. When it did for me, it created cancer and took a third of my nose away. Third of my head, burned a hole right through my
I just want to mention
skull.
something else. That, you know, that EMF, because it's everybody, you know, the police officers, they have that for speeding, that
The radar?
radar gun. Are that damaging when they, you know, go by you?
It's damaging for them because they're exposed to it for hours and all day long. But for us, we'd have to be underneath it all constantly for at least 20 minutes.
So the EMF, if you get EMF.
That's not EMF, that's
No, but-
radar, that's radiation.
Okay, no.
Radio signal.
EMF, if you get EMF, you could notice the signs that you get static electricity or something?
Well, it depends upon the individual. Most EMF sufferers will suffer like, was that carpal tunnel syndrome, sore joints. Carpal tunnel syndrome is a bullshit answer for all that soreness. There were secretaries who've been around hitting hard key punch, you know, typewriters for years, and writers never getting carpal tunnel syndrome. And let me tell you, those old typewriters, I used to write with one, and it was a lot of work. It's the electromagnetic fields in your computers, in your laptops, and your electric typewriters that are a problem. It's not the way you're holding your hand. That's a cop-out. They don't want you to know the true reason, because they're so fucking cheap that they'll use, instead of using transistors, they'll use capacitors, or it's the other way around, and it'll cost them 50 cents more. And they'll eliminate the electromagnetic fields that will cause the problem. Because they're cheap and want to save, you know, 50 cents, they'll fuck your health up.
Raise the price to the 50 cents?
But they won't do it.
Can someone build their own computer and make it the way that's better? Or?
Well, yeah, but that's very expensive. You can do that. Or you do what I do. You get a laptop, you put the laptop so many, you know, a foot away from you, and use a separate keyboard. Then you don't worry about it.
How many feet away do you have to be from the?
About a foot.
For a laptop, a foot. If you have a regular tower, you have to be 3 feet away from a tower. The tower emits an EMF field for about 3 feet.
So it's not the monitor, it's the computer.
Well, if you have a monitor, that's radiation. And they have 3 laser guns in them.
So how far away should
27 feet. So the televisions are the same way. Minimum of 27 feet before there's fallout. Before the fallout's gone.
That's why you need a flat screen.
That you need a flat screen, an LCD, liquid crystal display. The fallout is about 1.5 inches away from the screen. Almost no radiation.
How much are they?
Depends, anywhere from $300 to $1,200, depending upon the size you want.
Are you talking about computers now?
Yeah.
EMF fields and computers,
Aajonus, one time, when I was talking to someone at the airport, trying to convince him to not x-ray my food, the fellow said that when I'm up in the airplane flying, that I get hit with way more radiation from the sun.
Absolutely, but it's a sun radiation, and there's no damage from sun radiation unless you have no good fats in your body.
So it's a different kind of radiation that we
Completely
get in the
different
machines.
kind, yes.
How far from a cell phone?
Well, when I put the meter up to it, it's about probably 9 inches from the cell phone. But the problem is that radiation affects the nerve tissue. It doesn't seem to affect other tissue. So what I use an earbud. And I put the meter up on the earbud, and there's no radiation at all. But it's right there, especially where that antenna is. The highest amount, it goes up to 7 to 8 gauss of radiation. So if I'm using it, I keep it away from me. Or if I happen to be, even a cordless phone is the same way. So I have a headset with my cordless phone. And I will have it, near a thick layer like my pants. I have it clipped onto my belt if I have to walk around and do things while I'm talking on the phone. Otherwise, it sits on the desk or somewhere else, or on the couch, wherever I'm sitting. It will not be against my body.
Were you successful in getting the airport people to let the food on without x-raying it?
No.
We weren't either. But Aajonus seems to have a way.
Well, I'm persistent, and I'm very nice about it. I just keep telling them, well, let me talk with your boss.
Well, we did that
And by
too.
I spend an hour and a half most of the time doing it, so I just have to be patient.
He's just more stubborn than they are.
I thought we were too, but then
And I also
eventually
I turn heavy guilt on them too. I mean, I tell them, I was diagnosed with bone cancer. I'll show them my teeth or my scar. I'll just keep doing it until they break down.
Are you going to get that letter from what are they,
TSA? Yeah. Well, I'm going this week to talk to them.
Okay, because we could use the letter so we can.
Good letter.
That's
Okay, do you have a question? Do you have a question?
Actually, that's not what I was a question for. I just want to see how your son's doing, Jeff. When I read that story, and I think it's back in the Midwest, is that correct?
Yes, he's in Cincinnati.
Yeah. You doing okay?
He's doing fine, except that he has a crack problem. But as far as the accident goes and healing from that, he's fine. But the psychiatrist in San Diego showed me a report that people don't usually see, and it showed that 76% of the people who've been diagnosed as crack addicted, clinically crack addicted, were all on Ritalin as children. And he was put on Ritalin as 6 years old. As long as he does the diet, he doesn't have a problem. So right now he's okay. He's been okay. He's been sober for 1.5 years. But I've seen him go 2.5 years and then go off the diet for 6 months, and he's back into the crack.
Like he craves it somehow. There's
Yeah,
a craving.
there's a physiological craving. And it's like the pharmaceutical industry knew about it. And when Bush Sr. and the CIA were hauling in crack cocaine during the 80s, they were affiliated with the pharmaceutical houses that knew that Ritalin and crack addiction were connected.
Yeah, well, we're talking about major crime bosses.
Yes,
It doesn't surprise us.
major crime bosses. And that's what the pharmaceutical industry is. Major crime industry. Okay, do you have questions?
Yeah, I am interested in the mad cow disease thing. It's a virus. I would like to understand it more. I understand the causes is like pesticides and that kind of thing, right? It's just that, you know, when I'm back home in Canada, there's just so much hoo-ha about it, and I don't understand it fully to like come out and say anything and go, you know, I tell them, hey, it's all bogus what you're hearing on the TV, but I'm just not sure how to really explain it so they get it, you know.
Well, there's a serious problem. You've got animals that are getting degenerative activity in their spinal cord and brain. It's turning into sponge, melting, air pockets that will just eat away because they're not eating the foods that they need, and they constantly get these. They're put these dewormers on their spinal cords. Yeah, the dewormers on the spinal cords, plus they're getting all these hormones and antibiotics and other heavily alkaloid-laden chemicals in their diet that affect the nervous system. All those heavy metals, all those alkaloids go to the nervous system. They do damage. So if you put a cow on a heavy fat diet, you know, if you fed them lots of grasses that were very high in fat, or other vegetables that were very high in fat, and throw avocados down for them, they wouldn't react as badly because they would have the fats to bind with those poisons. But when they're fed all these grains, which are pretty fatless, their body does create fat from it, trying to bind with it, but it's not the same kind of fat that handles it easily, so that they have degeneration. So that kind of degeneration just means you don't want to eat the spinal cord or the brain. Now, when I was in Paris from 1993 to 1996, 3 months out of the year, I was eating the mad cow disease, and I had no effects.
Now, but what is the actual disease? It's a virus, a solvent that's being created?
Yeah, it's basic. Well, what happens is the body the nervous system creates a solvent that causes a folded prion. And a folded prion the prion is, you've got fat, you've got protein bodies which are called prions.
Okay.
You've got a toxin that goes in. Those prions were there to help structure and also could be helped to as solvents. But then when you have these poisons go into them, they fold. So they don't react properly, so there's no defense mechanism. But you have to understand the medical profession does not, and the industries do not want to be blamed for their chemical problems. And all of our problems are chemical problems. Even the tribes who eat cooked meat and mainly live just on cooked meat have no serious degenerative diseases. In old age, they'll get osteoporosis, they'll get weak, they won't have the same muscle tissue, they have slow atrophy. But no serious heart disease, no serious Alzheimer's, nothing like that. That only happens in our high polluted societies of chemicals. So the pharmaceutical industry and other industry and the government, and let me tell you, the government's all bodies of the industry, of industries of all sorts, they're out protecting themselves. This whole hypo-blue about so much mercury toxicity in fish is our problem. What they are doing is throwing the blame off for mercury from fish. They want to distract you. The greatest mercury poisoning, which would take you 40 years of eating fish to contaminate yourself, what they do with one vaccine with thimerosal. One vaccine will give you 40 years of the contamination of eating fish, cooked fish.
Any vaccine?
Any vaccine. There's thimerosal in it. And that's 80% of all the vaccines that are in it.
More kids are getting autism. My nephew's daughter.
700 to 800% more.
1997, they found that most kids have been getting autism. Since 1997. It was in the paper.
A lot more than that.
I mean,
They've been studying this 30 years.
Now, aren't they getting away from the thimerosal, though? Aren't they moving towards
They're
the
lying.
egg?
They're lying. Well, first of all, the government and the FDA gave them 5 years to phase out because they had billions of dollars of vaccine stored in their vaults. So it's okay to go ahead and poison the children for 5 years because pharmaceutical houses will lose money. So that's basically where that went. The new drugs that they're saying are very low in thimerosal, some people call it thimerosal, some call it thimerosal, whatever the correct pronunciation, I don't know. Anyway, it's still in there. We've another company and I had some of the vaccines tested, and they were very low reduction. See, the problem is that they put the thimerosal in the vaccines because vaccines, like which happened to Pasteur, every time he vaccinated an animal, they went into anaphylaxis, shock, and died. And that same thing will happen to humans, but for some reason when they use the thimerosal in it, it causes such a reaction in the body that the body won't die. Won't go into that kind of shock as often.
Such a what reaction that it won't die?
The type of anaphylaxis, the allergy to the
vaccination,
to the disease that they're giving you when they inject you with the disease.
It's such that it's not lethal.
Right. It stops the high rate of fatalities.
The court-martialing that they don't do to the armed forces now, right? They stop that if they don't take the vaccine.
Well, not necessarily.
No, they're still forcing them.
Yeah, they're still forcing them to.
Bernard said he saw it on the computer that they stopped.
Yeah, but that's bullshit. If you go to those, if you hear the inductees and the volunteers who go into the military, they still threaten. They don't court-martial you, but they sure make your life hell.
It sounds like what you're saying is when they put the heavy metal in the vaccination, that it's almost like it kind of inhibits the actual disease enough so that it doesn't make that huge reaction.
Well, I think what happens is when you get a flush of disease in the blood, the body reacts traumatically because normally a disease will be a developmental reaction within the system, and the body has a reaction to that. Every time, every single vaccine for something like 9 years, every animal that Pasteur injected with the disease died. Not one survived. Then they started using formaldehyde with the disease, and then they started using thimerosal in the 1920s, the liquid mercury. What happened was it looks like the body had to deal with the poison instead of the disease. So the body was so involved with dealing with the high poison that the disease didn't get registered. And then the body didn't go into an anaphylactic shock as often. But there are people who go into anaphylactic shock and die from vaccines even with the thimerosal. Yes?
I have a question on this mad cow disease, because I know that it's, like most viruses and bacteria, it's been around for billions of years, as long as this planet's been here. But since that's a more recent thing, it's essentially been created by man, correct? Because, okay. I want to know...
But it has the exact same symptoms of foot and mouth, which is basically a flu, a cow flu.
Okay, so when, like, you hear about Europe, when they, burned all the millions of cows that they had over there, and they apparently couldn't bury them in the soil. They've actually stored them in old, like, World War II plane hangars and just because you can't, it's so toxic that you can't even touch any of it. And apparently if they do, like, a, like an autopsy on someone who's had mad cow, they have to literally throw away everything because there's no way to sterilize it, to sterilize anything. Is that true? I mean, do you...
Okay, just remember, when something's alive, sterilization doesn't matter. Okay, I mean, that matters. Sterilizing is there to destroy bacteria and virus and things that are alive. But when you have metal contamination and poison, you can sterilize all you want to. You can sterilize strychnine till you're blue in the face. You can heat it up to 3,200 degrees and it won't disturb it. You'll still die of poisoning, strychnine poisoning.
Okay.
They're just throwing it off on something, a natural disease, when it's really the chemical poisoning of those animals, which is the problem.
Okay, right.
And there's so many poisons, there's so many alkaloids, and just strychnine is an alkaloid. All of those poisons are heavy alkaloids, just different chemical structures of alkaloids that makes them those poisons. So when you have all of this in those animals, you can't bury it because it'll damage the soil, it'll get into
the groundwater, right?
The groundwater, it'll
Right.
get into the system.
So I guess, though, my question is, so you do believe that this particular virus is extremely toxic and that it is good?
The virus is not toxic.
It's just, but
The poisoning of the body is
But what I'm
toxic.
saying is like the ashes that are left over from the cows. I mean, you agree that they should
But
be...
it's not the virus that's the problem, it's the poisoning
Okay.
that's the problem.
But you still say that they should just be completely left separate for anyone can come into contact with.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's my... Because if that is indeed that, which is what you're agreeing to, then, I mean, that's pretty serious because it's like, when, I mean, yeah, you can burn them and you can... But what the hell do you do with them? I mean, you know...
But it's like any toxic waste that's highly toxic. You have to control the contamination.
Right. Right. I don't know. I guess it's just kind of scary. It's sort of like with nuclear waste. It's like you got to find somewhere to put it, but wherever you put it, guess what? It's going to contaminate something.
Nuclear waste, they just don't want to take care of it. Brown's gas will take care of it.
It's a little late now, Kathy. We won't worry about that.
Okay.
Because what time is it?
Almost 4.
Oh, we still have a half an hour, folks, so...
Well, we can go around again.
Yeah,
Some
I'm
more
ready.
questions about the vaccination.
If they go around again?
I heard recently that, do you want to, go ahead, Kathy.
Do you want to collect it or they want to go?
No, that's all right.
All right.
Do you, have you heard that supposedly when they give someone a vaccination now that there's some microscopic little information chip that goes through the needle? Does that sound realistic? Have you heard about it?
Well, they've got these microchips that are about the size of, let's say you took a needle and you took off a section about a quarter of an inch. They do have sensors, they're radio devices that they can put under your skin, but they're not supposed to be doing it without your permission. But they're doing it to prisoners, to military people, stuff like that.
You know, when somebody has autism, I just want to tell you, this is my nephew's daughter, they only like pasta, fries, anything starch, nothing else. They don't have no taste for anything. Maybe a little hot dog, that's all she ate.
And they'll stay
6 years
autistic.
old.
And they'll stay autistic.
They'll stay
Exactly.
autistic.
But she talks to people, she talks to me or to my sister or grandmother, but they don't socialize very well. Can't.
Well, I'm making it around. I'm ready.
Let's do it, Jim.
I have a real fundamental lack of understanding of, like, if the stomach has acid to digest, like meat and stuff like that, when you take something alkaline, like the vegetable juice or anything alkaline, pineapple, whatever, doesn't that immediately meet up with the hydrochloric acid and
neutralizes?
So, what is the benefit to the rest of the body then? In other words, how does it get anywhere if it's neutralized?
Well, you have to understand that the stomach does not secrete hydrochloric acid until there's something that goes into it. Your stomach's not stupid. When you put vegetable juice in it, the vegetable juice doesn't cause a hydrochloric acid secretion.
So it can
If
travel
meat
on.
and dairy, eggs, any animal matter goes into your stomach, that will cause hydrochloric acid secretion.
I got it.
Avocados will too. Anything that's high in fat. Coconuts will too.
Okay, so when you ingest something like vegetable juice that is on the alkaline side, then it can actually get integrated farther in. Like it'll end up making salts somewhere,
Yes.
but it'll go through a lot of digestion first, right?
Well, it goes through very little digestion. When it's absorbed, it goes to the pancreas mainly, and the pancreas disassembles the vitamins and the enzymes and reassembles them into whatever we need for our digestive ability.
So that is where the value is. In other words, if
And when those products get into the blood, then they alkalinize the blood.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now it's clear and easy, isn't it? Okay, we're going to go to a question.
I have a question, yes. Regarding the juices, don't they have a lot of sugar, and would that cause any problem to someone that is hypoglycemic?
If it's carrot juice or beet juice, any of the high-carb diets, carb vegetables, yes. But celery and parsley, those are not high in carbohydrates.
Okay, so the best
remember,
is to
we don't
take
digest much cellulose. And when you're juicing, you're removing most of the cellulose that's in the pulp, so that's where most of the sugar is. So you're mainly getting minerals, H2O, and enzymes.
Right, but then does this still apply to the sugar content for a hypoglycemic? Will it cause any
No, you will not
reaction?
do that unless you're having carrot juice or beet juice.
Okay, so green juices would be the...
Correct. Then there's no high carb problem.
And what is the best amount to take?
You want to cover all that's in the recipe book?
Okay. All right.
It's all broken down in the recipe book. Everything you want to know about that.
You mentioned beet juice. I heard it a lot. I think James said that beet juice is good for helping your liver. Is that true?
That it does help the liver. It helps the kidneys. It helps anything that wherever we need solvents made. Beet juice helps because beet juice has a natural hydrochloric acid materialization complex within it.
How often would you
like corn on the cob does too.
How often would you recommend having some beet juice? And is a couple of ounces enough?
I don't think that anybody needs it unless they have a kidney problem or a digestive problem. But if you're going to have it, just to make sure, then maybe once a month, 4 ounces a month, 2 ounces at a time.
I put some Gerald Steiner with mine. I couldn't drink it straight. Just once.
Question?
Yeah, going way back when they were talking about viruses, and you said viruses are made by the body as solvents to clean out matters. Well, when the CDC talks about when they sort of give a weather forecast for upcoming viruses that are these new plague-like viruses.
And they're all psychic, aren't they?
Right. Well, what's going on there? Is it just a crock so they can sell their wintertime flu
Absolutely.
vaccines?
Yeah, the CDC wouldn't exist if people didn't have fear of disease.
Oh, there's no question they're playing a fear card.
Can I answer that question too? I have 2 medical centers now, and I will tell you, they send us things, so I can tell you it's a joke. And it's kind of funny that people say, "Why you want a medical center?" We do alternative things, but they still send you things. And I laugh at them because they'll predict too far in advance. And I know that part of it is that they're the cause of some of it, absolutely more than people want to say, but the rest of it's just a joke. People come in, people ask me about getting flu shot. I'm so adamant against vaccinations, it's not even funny. So we don't do vaccinations. We will not touch that. But it is actually accurate. They will fax stuff to you from the CDC. They will fax it from the National Institutes of Health. And they'll just tell us every physician in the country, because they have a database. If you have a DEA license, you are in a database. So they will send it to you. And they will locate you too.
And all your high executives in the FDA all go from the executive offices of FDA to a high-paying job in a pharmaceutical industry.
Of course.
And vice versa.
But how do they create...
And the CDC is the same way.
How do they create pandemics? If viruses are created by the body and not spread by either breathing or whatever, how do they create the pandemics?
Who created it?
I think that the CDC and pharmaceutical houses may have a hand in creating illness.
Oh, they do, because they're dealing in drugs, which cause the body to break down tissue and to need a virus or a bacteria or a parasite.
Plus, that water is loaded, and the chemtrails, the air. There's already chemicals everywhere. It's they don't.
We're always going to have detoxification. We're going to have colds, flus, and detoxification. Period.
I didn't have one this year. I don't know why.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So you're on a 100% raw diet. You don't need to worry about smallpox virus, terrorist scares, or anything like that?
Well, from my research on those particular germ warfare, You have to inhale the powder directly. Exhalations from anybody else won't be a problem, but it's the alkaloids and the poisons which create the problem. It's not really the smallpox virus or the smallpox bacteria or germ, so to speak. That is not the problem because it's not alive, it's dead. It's the alkaloids that are associated with it, which are poison when you inhale it. So you have to be around where the gas or the powder is directly involved. Now, I got that information who someone who worked for the military and was in that division. And he said, if you don't inhale it with 2.5 minutes of the explosion, you'll never be affected. And there's no spreading. He said that's all bullshit, again, to scare you and to build the military budget.
Same with anthrax, I presume.
Anthrax, same way.
So you got to hold your breath for 2.5 minutes.
Hold our breath for 2.5 minutes.
Yep, 2.5 minutes.
Hold your breath for 2.5 minutes.
Or breathe through silk. Silk won't let anything pass through like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can I say something about that? Yeah, there's an organization called National Vaccine Information Center, NVIC, and they do intensive documentation and research of the harmful effects of things like thimerosal, hoaxes on these vaccinations. They keep statistical records of the number of military personnel that get sick or die on these vaccinations. They're involved in monitoring cases where military personnel are court-martialed or kicked out of the military for refusing vaccinations. They give you the whole story on autism and that, and it's a real shocker. And they tell you about the connections with the drug industries. And if you realize the billions of dollars that drug industries are making off these vaccination scares, and the government, our money is funding these huge stockpiles of these vaccinations.
Absolutely.
What's the website again?
NVIC, www.nvic.org. And you can contact me if you need to get that.
NVIC.
NV, National Vaccine Information Center.
Got it.
Very good source of data.
So every disease that we hear about then isn't really disease. The only disease really is toxicity. Is that right?
That's it.
That's it.
Toxicity accumulates and starts degenerating your cells.
And everything, smallpox, colds, flus, are just different
German
bacteria
measles.
that...
Yeah. We're supposed to get
And
this
polio exists today, but they don't call it polio. They just name it something else to make you believe that they've got polio.
Polio is just
Oh, really? What do you call it now?
what should it be?
Well, now they're calling that CJD, which is mad humans. Basically, it's the degeneration of the nervous system.
There's one virus that you don't hear a lot of people talk about, but it's in Africa, the Ebola virus, and that's pretty, I mean, it's supposed to be like you can
but
get it.
that, from what I understand, that was man-made.
Oh, it was?
And it was all injected. Injected with vaccines, the same way the AIDS was injected with the smallpox vaccine.
When they were, testing was it?
But they were injecting it, from what I understand, the Ebola bacteria was injected with hepatitis vaccine.
Because from what I understand about the Ebola is that if you come into contact with it, like it kills people within 24 hours, which on one side effect, it's good because then it can't spread as fast because it kills people like that. I don't know what you know about it other than...
Well, again, it's an immediate poison. And also you have other symptoms like down in South America, all through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the way Coca-Cola and the jewel mining industry got rid of the natives was they said that, they would arm these Brazilian guys with machine guns and poisons to go poison the water supply to keep the people and the missionaries confused. They said that they were getting smallpox and they were dying of smallpox. But almost every poisoning disease will have smallpox-like reactions. And if you got a medical guy in there saying, oh, this is smallpox, people buy it. A news article goes out, this is smallpox, they buy it, but it's really poisoning. Formaldehyde in drinking water will cause that.
So same thing like
strychnine in drinking water will cause that.
It's like what they did to the Indians when they apparently
Well,
gave them
That was going to
Indians
be my
and
next
all this,
question.
yeah.
Is, so everything in the history books about white men bringing disease that American Indians did not have immunity, that's all false.
That's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So they deliberately killed them.
Oh, they were deliberately murdering them, yeah. But that was an acceptable genocide because nobody knew about it. It was disease killing them.
So they poisoned them?
So they say, yeah, they poisoned them.
They gave them blankets on the reservations that were...
No, that was the lie.
That was the lie?
That's also part of the lie.
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause
wow.
I didn't understand
So
that.
how did they toxify them then? What
They
did do?
poisoned their water system.
Oh my God.
Oh, the poison with what?
Poisoned their water system.
But with what?
Well, then how
With
did that?
formaldehyde and strychnine and a lot of other complex
Wouldn't they have
alkaloids.
tasted that?
Pardon?
Wouldn't they have tasted that?
If
Isn't it
it,
come out of
no,
that?
strychnine has no taste.
And that
Formaldehyde, when it's
was available in
diluted
the
enough,
19th
it has no
and
taste.
18th and 19th century, that was already available.
Oh yeah, they were using formaldehyde and milk,
Formaldehyde, I don't know.
Formaldehyde.
preserved milk. They were using formaldehyde. Benjamin Franklin stopped that.
Was that something that they used for the blood? The formaldehyde? No, they...
Formaldehyde was
Formaldehyde is
a poison that's
preservative.
used as a preservative. Preserve
Where does it come
tissue,
from?
and it doesn't matter. Yes.
So, because I came late, is you're saying basically like when you get a flu or something like that, these are cleansing reactions?
These are all cleansing reactions.
So if you don't, like, you know me, I got sick for the first time in like a decade this year, and I had my first fever in maybe 30 years. I didn't even know what was happening because I hadn't had a fever since I was a kid. This year was the first time, and I noticed everybody else was getting sick, but also I hadn't been eating as much raw as I used to. I used to be maybe like 80%, and I must have gone down to maybe 50. And I'm just wondering, could that have been a cleansing, or was it just... Because if you don't get sick, does that mean I'm not... If I don't have
You're
a
not
fever and I never
cleansing.
get sick...
You're storing your poisons. And most of the people who don't get sick die between the ages of 45 and 56.
So I'm stored. Because I was I must be really healthy because I never get sick, but I'm always strong. I'm always...
No, that's your hormone. I talked about it in the recipe book.
So,
Right. Any other questions?
Well, sort of end that, I guess. It's basically never a bug. It's always a toxin, right? I mean, it's always a chemical, not a bug.
It's always it's the chemicals damaging cells.
But I mean, yeah, it's the man-made chemicals or poisons.
Right.
It's never a bug. Are there any situations where there's any microbes that are ever a problem to us, or never the case? The microbes are part of nature. And
part of life.
Well, let's say you're so much in deterioration, you're so toxic that if you lay down in a pile of ants, you may not live.
Right. Okay. But for the most part, it's
and if you
always...
fell asleep and were really stinky, a vulture might come down and start eating at you. Then you've got a problem.
But it's
Yeah.
always chemical.
Right.
but you could ultimately be decomposing inside if your body's so toxic, and then you just have
Absolutely.
like internal bleeding and stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely.
There's a man.
Let me get
okay.
somebody else here.
Okay.
Max, you had a question? I thought you... Oh, yes. I couldn't tell whose hand it was. You guys are entwined.
Yeah. Whenever I exercise, I get a very deep, dark circle under my eyes. And it only happens when I do strenuous exercise. So I'm wondering what that is.
Well, from my experience, dark circles mean a liver problem.
Okay.
So,
Eat food to help my liver?
butter I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I
Butter and honey.
work on the liver.
Yeah. Put a hot water bottle at your liver at night. Make sure the circulation increases. Yes.
External body temperatures. I know 105 is the magic number. What happens if you get into a bath that's 106 or...
You'll start destroying the enzymes and vitamins in your skin and
that?
connective tissue.
A sauna bath?
Yeah.
Any kind of bath that's above 105 degrees.
Okay, so it's right immediately above that. So you what about like Indian sweat lodges or
Very
hot
toxic.
springs?
Very toxic.
Huh.
Very toxic. And if you were at the sweat lodges I was at, you'd find out that the Indians, when they put us in sweat lodges, they lie down and back. It's so dark you can't tell where they are, but they're lying down. There's 12 inches of complete ground air. And when I found them lying back, they weren't exposed to all those toxins and chemicals. They were on the ground breathing the fresh air. So when I got into sweat lodges after that, I did that too. So only the people who were ignorant, and that was another way to get the white man. Bring him into your sweat lodge with you and poison him.
And he's getting poisoned because it's too hot?
Well, you've got monoxides, the burning carbon monoxides.
Oh, from the water on the rock?
You've got other things on the rocks that are burning.
Oh.
You know, you've got dirt, you've got grass, you've got leaves, anything that they put to make the hot rocks hot or on the rocks.
Okay.
They're burning on the rocks.
With fire.
Correct. So all that smoke in there is not just steam.
Yeah, like when they sprinkle the sage or the cedar or
Right.
whatever?
There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
You're burning monoxides.
Oh, okay. All right.
The
So what about
monoxides are
people-
poison.
What about people who live in a climate that oftentimes will be 110 or 115 without air conditioning for a while?
Yeah, but there's that space. It's not like water where you've got your body sets out a cooling mechanism, and you'll have more fluids. The blood will be thinner, and you'll be cooling yourself. You know, you have a cooling system. But when you're under hot water and it's that close to the skin, there's no buffer zone. Especially if you're moving around. Let's say if you stay completely still, you might have a quarter of an inch, half of an inch buffering zone, but that's not enough. Normally we have about 3-inch buffering zone with air, or with fluids, no. Lewis?
Yes. What would you suggest is a good amount of exercise for me to do, or would you need to check the worry circles in my eyes?
I need to check the worry circles.
I see. Okay.
But you do have worry circles, and you do need to exercise. As I remember.
I remember we had a talk and you recommended exercise.
Just, about the viruses. This man, Brian Ellis, wrote a book about why we'll never win the war on AIDS, but he gives this whole lengthy history of, illness and viruses and the virus hunters. He says that there's like zillions of billions of viruses, and they've only named about 1% or less of all the viruses that exist. So it's just crazy that, they come up with the name of this virus and that when there's really billions, zillions, and billions of them
Because
everywhere.
each body builds a different soap for a different thing.
Yeah.
So if you've got trillions of different kinds of cells in your body, you're going to have a trillion different soaps. And calling them, saying they self-replicate is like saying because Tide is in every home that Tide self-replicates.
It makes bubbles when
Pretty
you put
stupid.
water on it.
Yes.
What about the prions then and all that mad cow stuff?
I already talked about it.
Okay, I missed it. No problem.
You missed it.
I missed it.
Okay, what time are we now?
4:17.
Okay, we've got about 2 more questions.
I was just going to say,
You have a question?
yeah, like when someone has, with the brain hemorrhage, it's the same thing. It goes for them too. If they would be having cabbage juice
Green
instead of
cabbage juice.
green cabbage juice, that would automatically also stop the bleeding
Yes.
in the brain, like as anything else.
It would even happen quicker.
Quicker would be
Quicker in the brain than it would in other tissue.
Oh, so because what they probably do is when you're in the hospital, they probably open your brain up, and then the person will automatically.
No, they usually put a chemical
That's why
in the
they
blood to thicken the blood.
Just a lot of questions I probably asked you, but I wanted to ask somebody else a question. I'm sure that has discussed with your procedure.
Yeah.
The gentleman there, he apparently
Jeff Slade?
Jeff, yes, he showed me pictures of the White House and lost a lot of weight and gained a lot of weight. And I just wanted to see what happened here, how long did the process take?
I'll just pass 2 around. I hope this doesn't embarrass
What is
you.
that?
As long as it doesn't make anyone nauseous. I mean,
What is it?
That's a nice success story.
Him before he went on the diet.
Yeah, photos of me, well, actually about a year and a half ago, but even I started the diet 4 months ago, and I basically looked the same 4 months ago. What had caused you, what had happened? Well, just, that's...
They couldn't tell her.
Yeah, it's just one of those situations where at some point you break down, your body can't function properly anymore because it's too weak, and
But he kept losing weight. We tried several
I was
different
eating all
diets.
kinds of. I was essentially eating the same type of, a lot of proteins. I think it was all cooked, and I would maybe put on. Well, I done a lot of like different cleansing type diets, whether it was macrobiotic or vegan raw foods or that kind of thing. And, then when I started eating a lot of animal products again, cooked, I would slowly put and maybe put on 3 pounds a month. From 100 to 103. But it was progress. But I never really felt good. It was a lot of junk. You feel like you're carrying with you. I mean, as soon as I started doing this, I started putting 3 pounds a week on.
So you were 90 pounds there?
100 pounds.
100 pounds.
And I actually got down to 80 pounds.
What do you now?
75.
You're 150?
I mean, so I put on like 50 pounds.
That's great.
4 months, I put on like 50 pounds.
Great.
Yeah.
I think he should go back to his doctors in the hospital who told me he had an eating disorder. I'm like, really?
Yeah, they gave
They did.
The whole eating disorder,
You better not, because if they find out what he's eating, they're going to say he has a really...
Isn't that crazy? I mean, they were so arrogant. They pulled me aside and they go, "Now, are you sure he's not bulimic and throwing up?" I'm like, "I know he's not." I'm like, "I live with him."
Did you do any like Thai meat or anything like that? Or
No, I really just started eating, raw.
Whenever I put somebody on the diet who's that thin or who's thin at all or underweight at all, and to me, if you're not with some excess, you're underweight, I'll put them on a building diet, never detoxifying them.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah, and I get told Aajonus, I mean, I can't thank him enough. I want to try and do some things while I'm in town. I want to talk to him more.
Give you a little hint. You ever seen those ads in the paper by Jordan Rubin, who has Story of Life?
Sure.
See the before and after picture?
That's what,
Yeah, but he would do something like that. So the ad, there you go. You got.
Yeah, but Jordan Rubin was drinking a quart of raw cream a day, and he doesn't put that in.
I know he was.
Well, that's why we wanted to give Aajonus these pictures, but now we need to do the picture now.
Yeah,
we haven't done that yet.
Jordan did the same thing.
Night and day. I mean, it was like having,
You've seen the soil-based organism, the Garden of Life? He just does it to sell that. He's a really nice guy. It's just that, you can't. Now he's got a new book coming out called The Maker's Diet, which will have a little bit more of this stuff in it.
Yeah.
So, that is good for us. That's really congratulations.
What's it called?
The new book coming out in April called The Maker's Diet.
Oh, right.
But he's against raw meat.
You're kidding.
Jordan Rubin.
Is he? I didn't.
What's your next book?
It'll be on detoxification. There's going to be a comedy version and a regular version. The comedy version will be entitled "Eat Shit and Live."
No.
I'm not kidding. We'll do a comedy version. And the other one I haven't named it yet.
Who's there? You keep it.
I think they went around. Everybody saw these.
They're really emaciated.
Is there anything you would tell somebody who eats cooked food, who's really skinny, but won't eat like raw food to eat to get them put on more weight?
If you get them to eat, at least some raw butter, raw cream. Might help.
Did you speak at all like on your views of like cultured veggie food? I was talking to my mom and my grandma. We just had an aunt of mine die. He was like 94 and was like took himself up until then, and my other aunt's like about to turn 100 in a few days. And their whole life they grew up on the sour milk, raw cultured vegetables, and kvass and all those kind of things. They're from like Russia.
Lots of bacteria.
Right.
Lots of bacteria. So you got those cultured foods create lots of bacteria. The bacteria in there eating up the garbage, that's what you want. That's health. But I went into that. Okay, that's it, folks. Great. No, thank you. Okay, where everybody goes, who wants to have the next one and where? Any volunteers?
You have to have it big enough to park.
So then I guess it will be at, it'll either be at the Rawson Co-op in Venice or in Century.
I'll do it.
You'll do it?
Yeah.
Okay, where do you live?
I live in Westwood.
Okay, terrific.
What's your name?
Bobby.
Okay, do you have email?
I do.
Email me at optimal@earthlink.net and give me your address and everything. Okay, thank you.
What's your from Mexico? Wasn't that the girl with
Nice meeting you.